I love rock and roll. Little splits, little blue splits. Good morning. Welcome to the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swann. I am your televangelist. I am talking today to an audience approaching dozens. Someday I'll be talking to tens of thousands. Who knows when that day will be, but any seed can become a tree. Any seed can take down a mountain. A seed can blow in on a breeze and find its resting spot in a little crack in the rock of a monolith, a mountain composed of one giant rock. One rock. But a seed can find its way into a crack in that rock and find a little water and find a little accumulated dust and find just enough to put in some roots and send some shoots up toward the light and get some free food. Courtesy of our friend old Sol, the one who feeds us all. We are all fed by the sun. But my tree grows a little bit every day, a little more every week, a little more every month, and at the end of the year, I'm a sturdy little sapling clinging to the side of this rock, and my roots have found more little cracks to worm their way into, and have found more moisture, not even direct moisture, but just the product of efflorescence, the water that is seeping through the rock. Through oversaturation, finds enough food to grow a little more every day, a little more every day. At the end of the second year, I'm a respectable tree. At the end of 10 years, I'm a big tree. And I'm throwing off seeds of my own. My roots are deep into the rock now. I am breaking that rock apart with my roots. And you can just picture the roots of a tree grip like a fist into that rock and burst it away. Find new cracks, make the old cracks bigger. In making the old cracks bigger, create new fissures that create new cracks, new places for roots to grow. And I'm old enough to spread seeds of my own. And so my children are, generation by generation, they're infesting the side of this mountain and finding their own cracks and their own crevices and finding their own way to burrow through the rock and find their destiny. And me and my children, year after year, generation after generation, in very short order, we can turn that giant monolith, that giant rock, we can take it and turn it into rubble. Turn it into our food, our future, our destiny. It's what living things do. That's what living things do. It's what trees do. It's what bugs do. It's what birds do. It's what mammals do. And it's what we do. It's what we do. It is what our nature is. This is what it means for us to be organisms, is to plant our seeds wherever we can. And to find old, dead, useless things and turn them into our food. To take all of the waste that is the waste product of the Big Bang, the vast universe, overflowing with emptiness, serially punctuated by meaninglessness. All of that is our food. It's the food of every organism, but it's our food in particular, the food of human beings, because we can make the most and the best of it. There's nothing wrong with it. I have a lot that I want to talk about, and I don't think I want to talk about any of it. I am awash in all kinds of wonderful new ideas. I've been working my entire life in this particular garden, and it's a tiny little space, and no one cares about it but me. But after 35 years, I'm bearing fruit in ways that I never anticipated, that I never saw. I'm one of the things that came to me this week, I want to say as a blinding epiphany, and at the same time I want to say what a fool I was not to have seen this before, but I've been talking around the idea of obesity, last week in particular, and I've been talking around the idea of fatherhood and the destruction of the family by way of the destruction of fatherhood, and the scales fell away from my eyes this week, and I saw all at once, just like that, that the two are absolutely related, that the obesity crisis in America is a function of the fatherhood crisis in America. It's a function of the family crisis in America. It's the visible, walking, waddling consequences of the destruction of the family by Marxist intellectuals over the last 150 years. They set about to destroy the family, and it worked. And in destroying the family, there are all kinds of ancillary consequences. Another one that is not so obvious to people is that adult male suicide is almost always directly related to family court. You have to read 27 paragraphs down in the story before you get to the real story, but that's when you find out that dad was involved in a 2-year custody battle with mom, and even though mom had half a dozen pinches for drugs and drug paraphernalia or whatever, that mom is obviously clearly has a problem, nevertheless she got custody, and dad fought it to the extent of his financial and emotional resources, and at the end he ate a bullet. And when you see that story, dad kills self, dad kills mom's self, dad kills mom, kid's self, that's family court. That's not suicide. We just saw it with Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's family court. That's what you have to look for. That's the cofactor that you should be looking for. If you're looking for a proxy factor that explains it all, that's the proxy factor, and that is the proxy factor with respect to obesity. That we want to cite all kinds of proxy factors like the food industry, or the food that they're pushing, like sugars or high fructose corn syrup, or super bleached white flour, all of these crappy foods that they push at us, their own rent-seeking, the rent-seeking of the farmers who grow the grains that turn into the food products that the food industry pushes on us. We want to cite all of these proxy factors as the reason for obesity, but the proxy factor that you're really looking for is broken families. With fathers who commit suicide, it's easy to connect right back to family court. With obesity, the connection will be harder to make. In many cases, it'll be easy to make because family court is as ubiquitous as obesity. But in other cases, you might have to look farther, that it might be the relationships that the people themselves are involved in, or their parents' relationships, that you're dealing with adults of bad family relationships, with or without family court being involved. But this is the cofactor that you're looking for. And, at that point, the reason that I chastised myself for not being aware of this before, for not drawing this conclusion before, is that we're surrounded by all of these cofactor claims all the time, all of these supposed influences that are somehow dispositive where human choice isn't, where obviously my take would always be to go back to the choice. And the second thing is, for my being blind about this, is that whenever I see obsessive behavior of any other sort, gambling or risky sexual behavior or hard drug abuse, alcoholism, workaholism, there are all kinds of obsessive behaviors that you can note in people, and when you're seeing those, what you're seeing is self-medication. You're seeing people who are self-medicating for pain. It doesn't necessarily have to be medication. Well, he's only working. He's a hard-working dog. He works 120 hours. Yeah, he works 120 hours a week in order not to go home. That's why he does it. I was that guy. I know that guy. What is it at home that he doesn't want to face up to? And that's the real story. What is it in the lives of all of these morbidly obese people, more and more all the time? What is going on in their lives that is leading them to seek palliation from that pain in the form of Cheetos and Doritos and 64-ounce Mountain Dew? Because it's not the food that's broken, it's the people that's broken. The people are broken, and they express their brokenness in this obesity, but the external solution will not solve anything because the problem is internal. And this is what I'm really not talking about today, is the idea of externalizing morality. And it's a big part of my philosophy anyway, is understanding the ways in which people try to externalize morality simultaneously in order to avoid the responsibility of having to be right and avoiding the responsibility for being wrong, having someone else to blame for being wrong. These are the reasons why the buyer would be willing to buy an external morality. The seller is going to push an external morality in order to control people, try to. But why would the buyer be willing to accept it in order to avoid responsibility twice? It's a double get out of culpability card. Of course it isn't. It doesn't work that way. And that is what we'll talk about later. And I'm not going to talk about it today because it's just too big and I feel like I'm on the threshold of something huge and I don't want to rush it. I am finishing a book about marriage and family, particularly from the point of view of fathers and fatherhood. All of the things I've been talking about since January, and I'm going to make that available. I'm going to publish that on June 15th, which is Father's Day. But my take at this moment, May 18th, 2014, my take at this moment is that the proxy factor that I'm most interested in human civilization is the father. Not the boy, not the man, not the male, not the boyfriend, not the husband, but the father. And the thing that will fix everything in Western civilization, everything that's broken in Western civilization is inherently fixable. We've just pursued bad ideas. We've forsworn better ideas for the sake of bad ideas, but there are still better ideas to be had by means of ontologically consonant teleology, by means of making moral determinations on the basis of the true nature of humanity and of your true nature as an individual moral agent, because the only moral actor is you. The only moral actor in your life is you. Everybody else is a moral factor, but you're the only one who can choose to act one way, choose not to act the other way. You're the only choice in the event over which you have any control is your own choices. Which is the obvious fact that we have to deny in order to even consider the idea of an external morality, an external moral code. But this is something that we'll deal with in greater detail in due course. And in the meantime, I'm going to abruptly end and send you off to enjoy your spring day. I intend to do exactly the same. We'll take this up again next week. I want to thank you so much for the attention that you've given me. I would really love to hear from people on the subject of obesity and what they think leads to it, either inside their own bodies or in the bodies they observe around them. But I think this is simultaneously obvious and a breakthrough. It's an obvious breakthrough. And looking to repairing families is a way of repairing this systemic physical malady as well. It's all a part of the same thing. I always argue that it's all one thing. And this is just one more example of that. We fix the ego, we fix the self, we fix you, fix me from the inside out, and everything else fixes itself, because I am the maker of all things. I am the measure of all things. I am the master of all things. I will have the world the way I want it, regardless of how it seems to be failing. It's not failing. It's my ideas that are failing. And if I want the world outside my mind to work better, all I have to do is make the ideas inside my mind work better. And by pursuing that road, I will find splendor. Bless you. Thank you so much. Have a great Sunday. Have a great week. And I will talk to you next week.